Welcome to the post-game show. I'm Elijah Campbell. I am not Jay Phillips. Jay Phillips has just walked into the building.
Yeah, I'm here.
And it looks like
I can't hear you right now, though. I can only talk into the microphone because I can't have my headset in yet.
Good, because I'll
explain in a minute.
I'm about to roast you for coming in here with a tie on. Jay Phillips is coming here dressed like he is about to knock on my door and tell me the good news. He is dressed like he's going to his first day of church. Jay Phillips is dressed right now like he is about to have his first pledge meeting at the fraternity that he is trying to join. I'm running out of material here, but this is exactly the first time I think maybe in show history any of us have come in here wearing a tie. And he's got his croakies on. Jay, which fraternity are you pledging right now? Which one?
Say the last part again. The first time I've worn a tie. Is that what you said?
No, first time anyone here has worn a tie for the show. And then I asked what fraternity you're pledging.
I see.
And did you bring my books from the library? Because that's part of the pledging process, Phillips.
No, none of that. None of that. No, I told you I was going to be skating in right at the last.
And I didn't even see a skateboard.
And I did. I got here at 3. No, we. My number 2 daughter is graduating this week.
Age or ranking?
Ranking.
Okay.
Well, no, wait. No, not ranking. Yeah, wait, no. Yeah, I got way too much.
Ranking your kids.
Sorry, I thought you meant. I was thinking more of like where the pecking order.
I
wouldn't. No, I don't do that. No, age.
Apparently, it's very fluid too.
My second daughter, the oldest. Well, actually, the oldest is in the air right now, on the way to Columbia. No, my number 2 daughter graduates this week from the University of South Carolina's Honors College.
Another big congratulations.
Thank you. And tonight, at 6 at the Koger Center, they have a ceremony. Now, our show gets off the air at 6, so I will be leaving a little early and turning things over to you for some of the 5 o'clock hour. I am dressed this way so that I can not have to go home and change. And you're right, we don't typically come in here. I mean, the only guy I know in radio that wears a tie every day is Paul Feinbaum. And I've asked Paul about that years ago. He likes to look all nice and businessy.
He's on national television, too.
Yeah, but I think even when he was, like, in radio in Birmingham, he wore a tie.
Really?
Yeah, I just think he likes to, like, I think he's just of the mindset that you get up and you go to the office every day wearing a tie, which is cool. I mean, I know people that do that.
That's old school.
Yeah.
Not me.
So I went ahead and got dressed for the ceremony.
For the occasion.
Yeah. And that's not why it took me a long time. I was also today, we're having a few people at the house over the next couple of days. And by a few, I mean a lot. And so I've been helping Mrs. Phillips prepare for that as well, in addition to preparing for today's program. And there's just a finite amount of time in one's life. And so that's why I told you around noon, like, hey, I'm just letting you know I'm going to be, and the point is, I was trying to be as efficient as possible and take advantage of every single minute that I had at my disposal today.
Trying to be efficient.
And I won't be here tomorrow because of the same thing. There's going to be a lot of people, and I've just got stuff. You know, it's amazing what a graduation weekend is like. And thank God it's in Columbia, because the last time we had something like this, it was in College Park, Maryland, for my oldest.
Ooh,
so
a lot more coordination.
Yeah, well, it's just getting up there and all that kind of stuff, you know. But anyway, so there's that. So it's been a day. It's been a day. But I'm here. I'm ready to go. We got some baseball to talk about. Solid win for Carolina. They jumped out early last night. Coach Kingston even upset at why he felt like East Tennessee State scored those runs in the first. But that was all they got. And Carolina tacked on 15 through the course of the ball game. So they win comfortably last night to get to number 30. A couple of interesting things. We got the full D1 baseball projections out now, at least for the week. Yesterday, we gave you Baseball America and what they had to say. D1, by the time we hit the air, had not put out their full projection, but they had put out their top 16 for the week. D1 had Carolina at number 10, hosting in the first round. Baseball America had them at number 12, hosting in the first round. But both projections have 3 different schools coming to Columbia, and that has prompted Elijah to head to the Twitters for a poll.
That's right.
On what we're looking at for that.
We have all types of polls up today. This is one of two, but I felt like this would be a pretty easy one to answer. So I gave two groups, and these are the two regional groupings that South Carolina is projected to be in. One is D1 baseball, obviously, like you said, and one's Baseball Americas. And Group 1, this was the Baseball America group. Wake Forest, College of Charleston, and Samford. Or Group 2, this was the D1 baseball group. Coastal Carolina, Georgia Tech, USC Upstate, the Fighting Torrey Craigs. And so far, we have 74 votes, including one of my own. And people say they would rather see the Gamecocks in Group 2, which features Coastal Carolina, Georgia Tech, USC Upstate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a pretty easy one for me. Mm-hmm. Mostly because I want zero part of Wake Forest.
Yeah.
Zero. None.
I'm going to agree and say that the D1 projection with Coastal and Upstate, and who's the other one?
Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech.
The Fighting Jarrett Jacks.
Yeah. Look, I still, and you and I discussed this yesterday when Wake Forest was put in the projection from Baseball America. I still think Wake Forest is gonna actually get a host opportunity. If they win the series with Clemson this weekend, then their seed line shifts from a 2 seed to a 1. I don't know which school they replace necessarily.
It's a hell of a resume booster.
But I just think Wake Forest has enough, and they've also got they've got games left in conference beyond Clemson, and they've got their tournament. I don't know, but that said, here's what I. So what's interesting to me again, I wouldn't want any part of Wake Forest. Coastal's very good too, and then the Chad Holbrook angle is an interesting one as well. And how that dynamic might play out and what that storyline becomes for that week. Look, I'm not going to sit here and rehash a lot of things. I mean, Chad was fired. We all know why. I think a lot of fans around here do still understand that Chad was a magnificent recruiter of talent. And that's one of the primary reasons that you played for 3 straight national championships. It isn't like Chad went out and got every single kid, but Chad's a hell of a recruiter. At the time, at the peak of his powers, Chad was rated as one of the top 10 recruiters in college athletics.
Not just baseball.
Not just baseball. But again, it ended badly. I've given my reasons many times on why I think it went that way. So, and again, we're not going to sit here and rehash all those things now 7 years later or whatever. But that's an interesting angle that maybe I'm not saying you're afraid of that if you're Carolina baseball, right? Like I don't want to play our former coach. I mean, sometimes you're going to do those kind of things. I honestly just think perhaps that the D1 projection might be more manageable for South Carolina. I don't know how good Georgia Tech is. They come out of a power conference. Coastal doesn't like you. You don't like them. And really, Carolina and I don't know, Clemson fans be able to tell me better. I can't recall of late when Carolina or Clemson have scheduled Coastal in the regular season, as much as Coastal might like it. There's nothing to gain for Carolina or Clemson to ever play Coastal in the regular season. Nothing to gain, despite Coastal's reputation. And interestingly, of course, it's Coastal here inside the state that has the only other national championship in college baseball. Clemson hadn't gotten theirs. Clemson's been fantastic at college baseball, but they hadn't gotten their title. It's Coastal that has the title. Gamecocks obviously have 2.
It's a hell of a run.
But that said, maybe that is just something that's gives this fan base a little more to pull for, and against at the same time, relative to Wake Forest maybe being like Maryland was while Chad Holbrook was here, coming down here. And I don't think people realized just how good that Maryland baseball team that season was, but they were really, really good. And sometimes you get beat, man, you know, and nobody wants to lose their regional at home.
No.
I mean, you know, listen, let's just call it how we see it. One of the reasons Monty Lee isn't at Clemson anymore is because Monty had a bunch of hosting opportunities and they didn't advance. And ultimately, you know, the brass was like, dude, you got to do more. Sorry, you know. And I mean, that's what
you're judged on.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons, right? I mean, let's just call it like it is. So yeah, I would agree. I would think the Coastal, Georgia Tech, Upstate, and if you could start with Upstate, who you've seen, and listen, they'd love to beat you, and they you know, you never know, man. But that one feels slightly more manageable. Here's my caveat to both. I don't think either one of them will hold because there's enough baseball left to be played to change all of these things.
Especially against really good teams,
Yeah.
right? I mean, look, the Sun Belt's a really good baseball conference, and Coastal Carolina is 11-10 in the Sun Belt. If they end up winning the Sun Belt tournament, or they end up, you know, taking care of business here at the end, there's opportunities for them to get more than 2 quad 1 wins,
Right?
Which is what they're sitting at right now, which means they'll improve a little bit, and they'll be able to get out of that. Or maybe they don't, and they play back, and you might have them as a 3 seed, which might be the worst case scenario, is to be a 3 seed in your region. So there's opportunities for Coastal. We mentioned the opportunity that Wake Forest has ahead of them against Clemson, and that's really the big thing to look for too, because they got 3 games against Clemson at home. If they win 2 of those 3, they're at 11 quad 1 wins. In being in the ACC, having 11 quad 1 wins, 2 against Clemson, I think would be a strong enough reason to put you into, you know, the top 16 to where you're hosting, especially if they're able to do some damage in that conference tournament. And that's one of the biggest reasons you don't want to see Wake Forest, right? Like, they've got a ton of wins on the road. They have 10 true road wins. They've beaten a lot of really good teams. Oh, and they have Chase Burns, who will be more than likely a top 10 pick in the Major League Baseball draft.
Yeah.
Whenever, you know, he's eligible.
We'll run over the rest of the D1 projections for you, get you some sound from Coach Kingston. Our buddy Jack Veltri at Gamecock Central going to join us later on this hour with his take on last night's win and begin looking ahead not only to this Missouri series, but to the stretch run here for Carolina. And again, answer the poll question at 107.5 The Game on the Twitters. Which of the regional projections most suits you? And I'll come back as well. I can't explain it, so I won't try. But I believe in the experts at D1 Baseball with a ranking they have that says even more about South Carolina baseball and its ability to do well in the postseason. All that and more coming up on the Thursday edition of the Postgame Show.
Lots of playoff basketball and hockey action tonight, and I got a good way for you to be able to get in on all the action. That's with our friends at Prize Picks. It's America's #1 fantasy sports app. It's my favorite fantasy sports app, and you can win up to 100 times your money by doing one simple thing. That's picking more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and then go ahead and watch those winnings roll in. I'm on a couple of games tonight. I've even got some hockey action going on tonight, and that includes David Pastrnak getting more than one, or getting a goal, and Joseph Wall getting less than 25 saves. I also like Tyrese Maxey to score more than 27 points tonight. You can get in on this with me. PrizePicks also offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account once you do win, of course. Download the app today. Use promo code 1075GAME. Again, promo code 1075GAME for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
18 minutes after 3 o'clock Thursday. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. If you're watching on YouTube, yes, I'm wearing a tie. Not trying to impress anybody. Didn't get here from any other job interviews. I scared the folks upstairs one time. Our offices are on the 19th floor of our building here in downtown Columbia. We broadcast from the first floor. But I had a meeting that I needed to go to separate from work, but I needed to wear. I felt like wearing business attire was proper, and I came in, and our general manager may or may not have thought that I was doing a job interview somewhere. She's like, because I usually come in a pair of jeans. About half the time I'll wear a shirt with a collar. And the other half of the time, I'm wearing either like a Fish T-shirt or some rock and roll T-shirt or some Arsenal gear. I have several Braves shirts that I wear. A few times through the NFL season, I will display my Bronco colors, things like that. I mean, it's just sports talk radio.
It is.
And the one thing that I miss about our dear friend Heath Klein is Heath's amazing T-shirt collection. And Heath, by the way, came into work, I would say maybe 5 days a year in a collar. Other than that, Heath had like a T-shirt for every day of the week, man.
That's spectacular.
And he had some cool, like, old school stuff and just places he'd been. So my wife thinks I have too many T-shirts, and I'm like, well, I'm not Heath, but I'm jealous.
Has a better collection of T-shirts.
So, but if you're watching on YouTube, yes, I am wearing a tie. I am going to a ceremony tonight, an event. I don't know exactly what. I don't even really know what it is. It's some type of event for the South Carolina Honors College graduates, and I am very proud of my daughter for being one of those.
Yes.
The general student population ceremony is on Saturday, and she's doing that, obviously. So this is something different. And I have been told where to be and when.
I do love that you admit you're not exactly sure what it is, but you are going to wear a tie for it.
I was told.
So there is a risk.
I asked.
Of being overdressed.
Well, yeah, I figured I wouldn't be wearing jeans to this, which, again, is my typical business attire.
Would have been rad.
Sure. Now, when I do see someone in jeans at this thing, I am going to let people know.
That you would have worn jeans.
See, there's a guy in jeans.
That this was more casual. You would have worn the jeans.
So, yeah. I'm not sure. It's in a ceremony of some type. That's about the best I can tell you.
So, if you're watching on the stream right now, no, Jay is not giving a sermon.
No, I'm not, and I'm not Charlie Sheen in Major League. Feel like a banker. And again, I'm not going on a job interview. I'm not trying to impress anybody in the building. Believe me, those days are long gone. If you ain't impressed by now, man, I don't know what to tell you. I did get a haircut yesterday, but only, again, because of these events that I'm going to this weekend. Otherwise, I probably would have let it go another couple of weeks.
I don't know what a haircut is.
Yeah, I get it. Elijah has long hair, and he's very tall. Anyway. Got that for you. All right, so D1 Baseball has their full field of 64 projections out. As Elijah just told you a few minutes ago, South Carolina, well, we told you yesterday they were the number 10. South Carolina projected to play Upstate in the first round. They would be the 4 seed here in Columbia, with 2 seed Coastal Carolina going against 3 seed Georgia Tech. And again, we have a poll question running. Which regional projection would you prefer as a fan? The Baseball America regional yesterday had South Carolina hosting 2 seed Wake Forest, 3 seed, help me out.
College of Charleston. That's right. Duh.
Chad Holbrook angle. I just talked about that. And 4 seed Samford. Don't call me Stanford.
Cortland Finnegans.
And so there you go. So all right. So here let's run these down for you real quick. The number 1 overall seed is Texas A&M. They've got them hosting Louisiana, Lamar, and Omaha. They'd be paired up against 16. So I'm going to do it the way they do it, bracket form. They've got them going against 16 seed Oklahoma. All right, I'm not going to go through all the regionals. 2 seed is Arkansas. They go up against 15 seed Santa Barbara. 3 seed is Clemson, who, by the way, they project hosting Georgia, College of Charleston, and Army. So Georgia and Clemson have already played this year a couple times.
They have. Georgia won.
Yeah.
I think last time they played.
And they've got that regional, the Clemson regional, paired up against the Oklahoma State regional, with the Cowboys being the 14 national seed. By the way, they send Florida to Stillwater as a 3, to which Oklahoma State is going, are you bleeping serious? And they have Dallas Baptist, too. That's a hard regional.
That
one
is.
If that one came to fruition, I don't know enough about the St. Louis Billikens at the 4.
Rick Majerus ain't walking through that door.
He is not. I do love the Billiken mascot, one of the finer mascots in collegiate athletics.
Slightly terrifying, and it makes you wonder where they got it.
But for Oklahoma State to have to host Dallas Baptist and Florida, it's like, man, we want to host, but come on.
It's the worst thing about Florida, man, is like they have a very average to below average resume, but they also have Jack Caglianone.
Yeah. Short series, Florida pitching, and playoffs, they go well together.
Potentially very icky for a team like Oklahoma State in that position.
Yeah. Tennessee is the 4 seed. They got them paired up against the 13 seed Duke, where, by the way, Mississippi State would be sent. Kentucky is the 5. They've got them hosting NC State as a 2 seed, paired up against 12 seed Virginia. Chapel Hill is the site of the 6 seed regional, Tar Heels number 6, with Alabama going there potentially. Against number 11, Indiana State, where they would get Vandy as the 2.
Congratulations. You get to host a regional. You get Tim Corbin.
Vandy could still, I think, work their way into hosting. I do.
They're on the cusp, I think.
They are.
They're on the fringe.
They are. Florida State is the 7 seed down in Tallahassee. Again, that regional paired up with the Columbia regional. Again, Gamecocks, Coastal, Georgia Tech, Upstate is the projection. Greenville, North Carolina is the site of the number 8 seed, East Carolina, of course. They have Wake going there. Interesting.
Tough.
Paired up against the 9 seed, Oregon State. So, most of the same teams are in here, obviously, just paired up a little bit differently. One other thing I wanted to mention, and again, next week I'm going to, industry term here, effort, a visit from our good friend Aaron Fitt of D1 Baseball, who joins us several times throughout the year. D1 Baseball now has something called the Diamond Sports Ranking. I could try to explain it to you just a little bit, and it'll make your head hurt. In contemplating the new ranking, they say they wanted to address a few things, like teams dropping simply for playing a team with a low RPI. The value of a win or a loss based on what they should or shouldn't do, which is how the BPI works at ESPN.
Yeah.
That's why this year's Carolina basketball numbers for a lot of games late in the season especially were really skewed toward the opponent when they probably shouldn't have been, and Carolina kept winning. It's
because they played above expectation.
Yeah, because there's a level of expectation built into the ESPN BPI, and this Diamond Sports Ranking does not attempt to do that. And like it says, when comparing two teams, RPI doesn't necessarily mean that the better team is higher ranked. And in that regard, their current Diamond Sports Ranking at D1 actually has South Carolina as 6th in the country. A&M is 1, Tennessee 2, Arkansas 3, North Carolina 4, Florida State 5, Gamecocks 6, Clemson 7, Kentucky 8, East Carolina 9, Virginia is 10th, with Georgia and Alabama right behind at 11 and 12. So SEC heavy with some good ACC schools in there too, obviously. But again, is it an opinion? No, it's an algorithm, and it's fact-based in terms of results. Results are facts, after all. So they're trying not to throw as much in there. And they love, again, I was watching their podcast yesterday. The D1 guys love Carolina's schedule. Carolina, by the way, let me make sure of this. It's not on here. Let me double check it, Elijah. South Carolina has the 5th toughest strength of schedule according to how this ranking is produced. 5th toughest in the country. If you're wondering, by the way, A&M, 68.
Ooh.
Tennessee, 96. North Carolina's 10. Florida State, 11. Clemson, 19. South Carolina, 5. So
It's a gauntlet.
yeah. Again, that matters in terms of why you might see Carolina have the record they do relative to some of these other schools that are already approaching 40 wins. You know, Arkansas is at 39 wins. Tennessee's at 37. A&M also has 39. North Carolina has 35. South Carolina beat them, though. But Clemson has 2 over South Carolina. You know.
In one-run games,
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
It
2,
takes
5, 4
score
games,
into
right.
account for a lot of these.
Right.
A lot of these metrics take these scores
Yeah.
into account. Like didn't lose to Clemson, 10-0, get run ruled. Games.
Yeah, I don't know how much the committee would rely on something like this. Probably very little to none because it's not one of theirs. But it seems sort of because they just wanted something above the RPI, different than the RPI. Like I said, I could sit here and read to you. They do have an explanation. But quite honestly, I don't want to fall asleep while reading it, and you don't want to fall asleep while reading it. So I'm just going to trust.
My head hurts enough as is.
Yeah, numbers make it worse. I'm going to trust that the experts know what they're doing here. But I found it interesting as I read about this as best I could that Carolina is actually a lot better than you might think based on how some of these things are measured. Get you some highlights from last night's big win. Jack Beltry coming up soon, too. Be right back. Homeowners looking to make some improvements. Love where you live, love your neighborhood, everything about it, but the house is a little dated. But you've been there a while and built up some equity. Time for you to call Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union and take advantage of their fantastic rates on home equity lines of credit. Not only is it a terrific opportunity with lower rates and fewer fees, especially at closing, but you access the line of credit over a 10-year draw. Some equity lines or loans, you just here's a lump. Start paying interest on it. And if you don't need it all, well, you can't give it back because you've already borrowed it now. No, not with a line of credit from Palmetto Citizens. Access that. And then as your needs change, hey, you borrow what you need. It's that simple. Apply today at palmettocitizens.org or stop in and learn more at any of their 14 convenient Midlands locations. Join my wife and me, who are very happy customers of Palmetto Citizens. Again, check them out for any and all of your banking needs at palmettocitizens.org and achieve your potential.
Well, great game for us, obviously. Not sure if I'm more impressed with our pitchers or our hitters tonight. It's great to know that they both were as good as they were. So that was a good team we played tonight. 27 wins coming in, hitting 320 plus. It was a really good team, and the fact that we won 15-2 and gave up 3 hits, had 14 ourselves, just thrilled with what that team looked like tonight.
And that ETSU team, number 52 in the RPI. South Carolina, by the way, for what it's worth, in today's, at least Warren Nolan RPI, went up a spot.
Which makes them top 10.
Yeah.
They're a top 10 RPI
Number 10
team.
in the RPI. So this is a good baseball team. It's a good baseball team. How good? I don't know yet. As we talked with Derek Scott the other day, and he made a great point, are they getting hot? But are they rounding into form? And I think he maybe settled more on that terminology for this ball club. And I think that's fair. He's right. It's just, very few schools go on some massive run in the SEC. Mm-hmm. There are occasions when it happens in certain years.
Those teams are special, though.
Yeah.
Like special.
And we thought maybe, again, at the early going, like, boy, Kentucky is 11-1 in their first 12. Like, what the heck's going on up there? But now they're 5-4 in their last 9. They're, as you say, they're regressing to the mean. I agree with you. And they've got Florida, Arkansas, Vandy in some order to finish the season. So we'll see. But again, Kentucky's already assured themselves of a winning conference record. If South Carolina goes 5-4 in their last 9, they'll have a winning conference record, but a much harder strength of schedule, or at least a higher ranked strength of schedule. And how does that bode for Carolina? Again, we just told y'all you're 10th in the RPI, you're number 6 in this diamond ranking, you're number 9 in another ranking that, again, I will not attempt to explain.
Just know it's thorough. And there's a lot of math. I
just know experts believe in it, and they write about it, and they talk about it. So that's, like, it's not just some guy going, yeah, here, I'll just do this. So
not Kyle in the basement. Our friend Kyle.
That's right. It's got expert backing. And in that one, the ELO ranking, South Carolina at last check was 9th. So, yeah, whichever one you want to look at, right, in terms of computer analytics, South Carolina's a top 10 baseball team, as we speak.
And I don't think they're computer trickers, which is a nice a basketball term that, if you listen to Eyes on College Basketball, Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander use often to accuse teams of that might not be as good as their computer ranking. I don't think they're computer trickers. There's a good body of work here that tells me that they've played well enough to be able to earn the spot. They have a lot of one-run losses against really good teams. I believe there's 4 in the conference, and then the 2 against Clemson. So this is a team that, despite 14 losses, has a legitimate top 10 resume.
Jake McCoy started last night. Cut 7, please, Elijah. I alluded to this earlier, but wanted you to hear it. Mark, again, Jake gave up 2 runs in the first, but Mark really felt like maybe that wasn't the way it was supposed to happen.
We knew the guys coming in the game out of the bullpen were going to try to get 1 inning out of each of them, and you got to get these guys in a rhythm. We play Wednesday this week, so it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we wanted to get them on smaller pitch counts, but also get them back in a good rhythm, get some confidence. And the reason we pitched Jake is because Jake is an extremely talented freshman. Not many lefty freshmen in the country throw up to 96 miles an hour. He's gotten progressively better, and we just thought he deserved the opportunity. I think it's my fault that he gave up the 2 runs in that first inning. We pitched to the righty that was hitting over 500 on the year against lefties with a guy on deck that probably would have been a better matchup. And if we had done that, he might have not given up any runs in that inning. So I thought Jake handled himself pretty well today.
That's interesting to hear a head coach say, that's on me. That's on me. We should have avoided him. Maybe you don't give him the intentional, but do you just, not pitch to him?
Don't give him anything in the zone.
Yeah, just don't pitch to him. And other than that, Carolina didn't allow any runs last night. So there's that. But I do, Jake McCoy does have the look. He's got some things to work on, obviously. He'd be pitching, because I think he came into the game with, just 14 innings pitched, give or take? And went 2 last night. But we knew also that it was going to be a game where a lot of arms saw some action. And now the team hits the airways for Columbia, Missouri tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, first pitch in Game 1. And what I'm not calling a must-win series, I'm calling it a you-better-win series. Missouri's not good.
How bad you want to host region?
Yeah.
That's that kind of series.
Yeah, I mean, and Mark, I know, listen, we've gotten to know Mark well. He's good to us here on the station, and he's with us every week during the season, and he talks often, as most coaches do. Listen, we can't sit here and just talk all about what this could lead to. You've got to go win your next game. It's not, is it cliche? Okay, but it's also real. I mean, you do. The next game is the one you got to go win. But he also says, look, we know what's up. We as coaches have to keep an eye on this. We can tell and the players know too, man. Mm-hmm. The players know that these D1 projections are out and these Baseball America projections. They know what's up.
And they should know.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's good to know exactly what you have ahead of you,
Yeah.
and exactly the opportunity that you have this very moment to be able to go and get that goal that you set out at the beginning of the year to host region, maybe host supers if you were to get to that point. And look, part of that, what they also need to understand is, that might make you want to look forward to like the Georgia series or the Tennessee series. But one of the reasons why your resume is so good is that you're 18-2 outside the quad one.
Yeah.
18-2. There are a lot of teams inside the RPI top 10 that have more than 2 quad 4 or 3 losses by themselves. You have 2 in quads 2 through 4.
Right.
That matters just as much as the big wins and the big series are, which means you got to take Missouri very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, Carolina is what? They got 14. They got 12 in the quad 1. They have 1 against Belmont in quad 4 and 1 against Georgia Southern in quad 3. That's it?
3. Yep.
And am I right, too? I was looking yesterday. I don't know if it's changed. I was fooling myself. Carolina only has 1 game in quad 2.
Yeah, they're 1-0 in quad 2.
And it's upstate.
That's right.
But it's because, the reason I was fooling myself, so they played upstate at Fluor Field, but it counted, that was not a neutral site. In my head, I was like, well, that's a neutral site game, but it was not. It was scheduled there, but it was officially an away game, whereas most of the time in those minor league parks, you considered it, but I guess upstate was able to classify that as a home game. That's how it is on the schedule. So that was an away game.
Technically.
Yeah, I think they probably made it an away game or a home game for upstate so they could sell more tickets. Because I would imagine their part doesn't hold all that many people.
Yeah, I think your imagination's probably correct on that.
Thanks.
Nowhere near as much as the minor league stadium could.
Talked to Jack Veltri on the other side of the break. He was at the ball game. A lot of good insight on where this team is. What does he think of this Diamond Sports ranking at number 6 or the other projections? That and more with Jack Veltri, Gamecock Central, when the post-game show continues.
Well, it's much improved. You can point to a lot of different reasons, and I won't go into all of them tonight because I think it's just all of them. And I think some of it's personnel, some of it is preparation, some of it is confidence. There's a lot of different things, but right now it's the kind of offense that we hope to have going into the year. So just want to see it continue.
Coach Mark Kingston, after last night's win over ETSU, 15-2, the final score as South Carolina gets its 30th win of the season. Now off to Columbia, Missouri for a weekend set against the Missouri Tigers, a team that about a month ago in their ballpark swept Florida. That was right before the Gamecocks went down to Gainesville and took 2 of 3 from the Gators. So you got to be wary, even against the team that may be seen as the worst in the Southeastern Conference. To discuss that and more, we welcome back onto the program our buddy Jack Veltri, covering all things Carolina for Gamecock Central. Good to have you, sir. As Mark said, it's a lot of things with this offense right now. I think confidence is beginning to ride a little higher, even with the series loss to Arkansas going back a little over a week, Jack. They played really well in those games, and they scored a lot of runs against Kentucky in last night. This team feels like, as we talked with Derek Scott yesterday, if not getting on a hot streak, rounding into form.
Yeah, first off, thank you guys for having me on as always. But you can tell that this team is, playing a lot better baseball. But I think they're also a lot more looser. I think Mark Kingston's having a little more fun with it. And I think the vibes are high. And I think that's another part of why South Carolina's, doing what they're doing right now. Obviously, it all comes down to the way you play on the field. But I think those two things combined are really helping this team. And look, they played really close baseball against Arkansas, came up short, but then you really put it together against a good Kentucky team, and we're able to find a way to take 2 of 3 in what was definitely the most wild series of the season so far.
Jack, I'm not going to ask you about your beloved Islanders ouster from the playoffs against the Hurricanes, but I am going to ask you.
You're just twisting the knife, though, man. Ouch.
It was tough. That's why I said I'm not going to ask about it. I wasn't going to ask at all. But I squeeze hockey talk whenever I can get it in.
Sure.
But the lineup change, where Mark Kingston's been pretty vocal about, sometimes you make these decisions where you might have to sacrifice one thing for another, and he is going for more depth in the lineup and maybe less reliance in the field by putting Gavin Costas at third, putting Ethan Petrie at first, and optimizing the hitting lineup. What have you seen in that trade-off so far? Because you're scoring a lot of runs, and how have you seen that trade-off maybe play off in the field, and if that's something that can be sustainable moving forward?
I think it's definitely sustainable because at this point, look, you're scoring 38 runs over your last 3 games. It's going to be hard to keep that up consistently, but if you do something like that, if you are able to give yourself a chance offensively to win every game, then I think you deal with what comes defensively. And honestly, I think what they have defensively isn't even that bad. Gavin Costas had been playing third base going back to the fall. And, look, he's a good defender at first base, so I don't think the transition is that hard over to third. And then you have Talmadge Lekar, who's playing a pretty good shortstop. I think his bat will catch up a little more. Then Parker Nolan's been a mainstay at second. Then Ethan Petrie at first. I like what you have right now in the infield, and I like this whole lineup in general because it's not just your typical power strikeout kind of lineup. It's a lineup that, it has a lot of power in there, but you also have contact bats that can get on base and have good speed, and you're able to drive in a lot more runs with this type of order, which I think really plays well for this team. 4
more home runs last night, too, for South Carolina, who does take a lot of confidence to Columbia, Missouri. Jack, I have called the series this weekend you better win series, not a must-win series. You want to go along with me there, at least in the semantics?
I think so. I think that's a fair take, Jay. I think for me, I think they're going to take 2 of 3 this weekend. I think it's always tough to sweep a road series, and I do think South Carolina probably wins the first 2 games of this series. But then Sunday could be a toss-up, just depending on how much the bullpen has been used and stuff, and who starts on Sunday. I would have to imagine it's still an SQ, but I'm going to leave that up for we'll see what happens on Sunday. But I do think this is definitely not a must-win series, but look, you probably need 5 or 6 more wins to get back to where you were last year in terms of conference wins, and 16 wins in this league was enough to get you a hosting bid last year. So the fact that they're projected to be a 10 seed right now in the NCAA tournament, you're at 11 wins in conference play, you can definitely get 5 more over these next 9 games. And it really starts with this weekend where you need to at least take 2, but, try to get that 3rd one as well.
Now, Jack, when looking at the 2 different major projections for the postseason, there's 2 groups that South Carolina has been put in. Which group would you rather see the Gamecocks play in terms of optimizing their chances to get to Supers? A group with Wake Forest, College of Charleston, and Samford, or a group with Coastal Carolina, Georgia Tech, and USC Upstate?
Ooh, I'm going to take the first one, and I'll tell you why. Coastal Carolina, that sounds like a tough team, and they definitely are. And I've seen a lot of fans on social media and stuff say that they do not want to see Coastal Carolina right away. And then, the other teams you listed, USC Upstate, can definitely provide some challenges. And then who was the other team that was in that group?
Georgia Tech is the 3.
Yeah, wow, that's a tough region right there. And I think the other option feels a lot better for South Carolina. Look, whoever they play in the postseason, I think South Carolina's going to have a good chance against. It's just, look, when you're in a tougher region or going up against a potential tougher region, it can be a grind. And it's not like one of these things where you have your 3 guys for the weekend rotation and that's it. You're really going to have to throw all your best cards out there for potentially 4 to 5 games, and it can be a grind. But for South Carolina, we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah, I contend, as I told Elijah, I think Wake is going to work their way into being a host. I really do. So I don't know that. I think there's going to be a different too. And again, there's enough games left, Jack. But it's funny the way you said it because I kind of put it the opposite. I was like, I don't think I want any part of Wake Forest if they're the 2 seed here. But Coastal gives you a little more fan juice because there's some hate there. I think it would be a different environment in the ballpark, but at the same time, they hate Carolina too. So I mean, and they'd love to come. I mean, let's face it. In the Supers in 2010, Carolina spoiled the biggest party in the history at that time anyway of Coastal baseball. So Coastal's had their party now since, but at the time, so they'd love to come back, even if all those kids were, I don't know how old, 10.
6 maybe.
Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah, older than not 10, right? Yeah, younger. Jack, good stuff as always, buddy. Appreciate you. Enjoy the ball games this weekend. Jack T. Veltri to follow on Twitter, GamecockCentral.com. Good stuff. We'll have a little bit more from Coach Kingston, and coming up soon, Mike Triplett covering the Saints. How does Spencer Rattler fit in? He'll join us next hour from New Orleans. Be right back. We all need to use the bank, and sometimes you say when you're using the bank, why is the bank using me? Why am I paying that much for a checking account or any other things that I might be doing with them? Well, keep your money in the Midlands. Switch things over to Palmetto Citizens. All your banking can be there. Checking, savings, credit cards, car loans, mortgages, home equity lines, student loans, all of it. I'm telling you, all of it. CDs and everything to invest. Whatever you're looking for in the big bank, they've got it right here in the Midlands. But they don't pay stockholders. They don't loan or invest out of state or out of the country. Your dollars stay here. Local businesses get help. Charitable organizations get helped. Palmetto Citizens is ready to do all of that for you, just like they've been doing for their members since 1936. My wife and I are very happy with what we do with them. I think you will be too. 14 area locations all across the Midlands, and member services are always online at palmettocitizens.org. Check them out and achieve your potential. 4 o'clock on this Thursday. Welcome back in. It's the second hour of the post-game show. Jay Phillips and Elijah Campbell with you. We are broadcasting live inside the Herndon Chevy Studios in downtown Columbia, wherever you might be across our state and beyond, because some of you are beyond the borders of the beautiful Palmetto State. Thank you for being with us. If you are watching on our YouTube channel, yes, that is me in a tie.
Dressed like you're about to hand me an offering plate.
Well, I'll do that. I mean, hell, I don't have to do that like this if you just want me to pass the hat, man. What
You
you
can
got?
pass the hat.
Be like in
Ain't nothing
vacation.
going in it.
You know, how much you got? I'm asking how much it costs, and I'm asking you how much you got.
That's basically how you sum up how NIL has worked across the country.
It's true. I will be going to a graduation ceremony or event of some kind for one of my daughters a little bit later. She is graduating this week from USC Honors. We're very proud of her. She's done quite well. They have something for them tonight, and then there's something on Saturday. And as I said earlier, I'm a good dad and husband. I have been told where to be and when and how to look.
And you've accomplished that.
Well, I've accomplished how to look.
Yes, we haven't gotten there yet. That's true.
Let's not
put the cart
listen,
before the
man.
horse.
That's 3 boxes to check in the next hour and a half.
A lot can go wrong.
I will be here through the headlines of the day for you in next hour, and then I am bolting down to the beautiful Koger Center. So if y'all want to wave at me while I'm speeding, and do me a favor, law enforcement, don't just let me go. All right.
If you see Jay Phillips driving fast on the road,
Here's the thing.
No, you didn't.
I'm in my big old Sequoia. I can't speed anyway, even if I want to.
I know we talked about Kentucky punching above their weight class a lot in baseball this year, but that would be your Sequoia punching above its weight class to be able to break any speed limit.
And God bless her, she's getting a little older now. I think it's getting about 7 or 8 miles a gallon. I'm really not doing my part for the environment.
Oh, the ozone layer.
I do apologize.
Does not like Jay Phillips.
Maybe we'll get, but I love that car, and I have now. I'm determined to get it to a certain amount of mileage. Because it's going well. It's just a little older
forever.
now. Yeah, it's
they'll
just
last you a long
older now.
time.
But anyway, that's why I'm wearing a tie instead of, just a regular old shirt like I typically do, or a Brave shirt, or an Arsenal shirt, or a Fish T-shirt, or something like that.
No, you're not coaching a 90s basketball team in a conference tournament.
Nope, not. Just going to support my child because that's what I'm here for.
Most important sport of all.
Thank you. Interesting story. I don't know if this is going to work. We talk a lot of college football here, so we're going to get into that. We'll talk to Mike Triplett, by the way, who covers the Saints, in just a few minutes. In the last, decade-ish, it's become rather trendy. That's the wrong word to use, but that's the word I'm going to use. To opt out of bowl games that don't have any real weight to them, especially if you are a football player that has really high next-level expectations. Why run the risk of something bad happening to you in the bowl game if, the only meaning to it is you win another game, right? It's just a game. Look, I get it, so I don't blame these kids for doing it. But I'd like them to play. But again, I get it. So now, those folks that run the bowls, and collectively now the bowls basically have I guess, I don't know, not an agency. What do we call this? But they have it's called bowl season, capital letters.
It's like a collective of organizers of bowl games that basically try to operate under the interest of all bowl games to preserve bowl games.
Right. I mean, it's a nice trade association, I guess. Like the Chamber of Commerce or something. It's like the Chamber of Bowls. They call it bowl season.
They help with credentialing and things like that, and organizing.
And their executive director is a man named Nick Carparelli. And this week, he says they have begun discussions, the leaders of the bowls around the country, all 40 whatever of them there are, to try and have some type of agreement that they could reach with players to prevent a lot of these postseason opt-outs. He said to Heather Dinich, quote, "If you sign a contract and receive compensation, you're obligated to perform certain duties. In this case, play 12 regular season games and a bowl game, or a bowl game and a playoff. That's logical to expect. It's the way the rest of us working folks operate.
Oh, employees.
Ouch. Now, I didn't like that last sentence there.
It's snarky unnecessarily.
That's a slap. Mm-hmm. You're backhanded slapping the players that have done this. Let me read a little bit more. Eric Moses is the CEO of the Fiesta Bowl. He also spoke with Ms. Dinich. Quote, think about the industry that we're in. We put on live events. You come to see the talent. If the main talent isn't there, you go see the Stones and Mick Jagger's not playing. Are you really seeing the Stones? We want the best talent to be involved in those matchups and those games and those events. That's what people are paying to see. Yes, they care about the name on the front of the jersey, probably more than the name on the back. That's the special thing about college sports and college football. But you want to see the best guys play. And I think the only way we get to that is through a collective bargaining agreement and employment contracts that require you to play in the postseason if you're healthy. End quote. Again, that is from Eric Moses, the executive director and CEO of the Fiesta Bowl. So his bowl game carries some weight. I don't disagree with any of these things in theory. I don't think any of you listening disagree with any of these things in theory if you sign a contract. They currently do not sign contracts. And remember, for decade upon decade upon decade, they were basically being used, as we now know, illegally. And they've been told so. They, the schools, and the members of the NCAA have been told by the legal system in our country that you are doing it wrong, period, end of story. There is no gray area. I agree that, as we've said a bunch on this show, Elijah, and others have as well, that some form of collective bargaining is the best way forward. It's going to be harder than with the professional sports organizations because you don't have unionized employees. But some form of organization with labor and management can come together. I don't know what it looks like yet. But if I may, there's one fundamental flaw that they're leaving out, whether they have thought of it or ignoring it, or whether they haven't thought of it. And I hate saying this because I love college football, but the fact of the matter is, in my opinion, at least the truth of the matter, most of these games don't mean anything anymore. They're December exhibitions, and in a lot of cases, or at least a January 1st exhibition. And in a lot of cases, you've even got coaches admitting this is really more the beginning of my year than the end of my year. And bowls have to understand that. This is not, for those of us, and I wouldn't even include you, Mr. Campbell, in this group because of your age. You're not yet 30. You're close, but not quite there. But for those of us who are, say, over 40, we might remember a time, and even for people like me over 50, there were only a few bowls. Like when Carolina went to the Gator Bowl with George Rogers, or in '84, like that was still, that's kind of like going to the Fiesta Bowl now when the Fiesta Bowl was still a big thing. Or like it was a big deal. Like the Fiesta Bowl wasn't a big deal yet. Like the Gator Bowl was right there underneath the sugar and the cotton and the orange and the rose. Like those were the big four. And there was like Gator and maybe peach for a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And Fiesta was a good bowl, but it wasn't until Miami and Penn State played as two independents at 1 and 2. And the Fiesta Bowl said, hey, we'll get a lot of money and we'll pay y'all. Come on. And let's play for a title. They're like, yeah, cool. Let's do it.
Slightly above the blue bonnet.
It was great. And it totally elevated the Fiesta Bowl, but I digress. You know, it mattered more back then. It might have, and look, when Carolina and Steve Spurrier's teams went to the Citrus Bowl, like that was a big deal for South Carolina, because now the Citrus Bowl is sort of that bowl. There's more above it, but it's that bowl that's right below.
Was it the Capital One Bowl then?
I think so. I don't know. Yeah.
But I think that's the interchangeable one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I knew it.
Yeah. Capital One Bowl.
But,
yeah. That was that bowl. Yeah. Orlando Bowl.
It was New Year's Day Bowl.
Yeah. And the Outback was a big deal. When Coach Holtz took Carolina to play Ohio State, it was a big deal for this school.
Love blooming onions.
It's funny how many Carolina fans don't ever want to go back. It's almost like the Outback Bowl is like the NIT now around here. It's like, I don't want to go back to that damn Outback Bowl. But although they take it now, but I just think they're missing that. But they're not, and there's none of that in this story. And that's just my opinion. But I love what bowl games mean. But let's face it, even some of those, the reward is nice because you win a game, and you're going to play in those games. You're going to play another good team, But it's really more now about fans going to Florida, or if you go to the Holiday Bowl, going to San Diego or something like that, or maybe going down to Houston for something. Although, I don't know, Houston around New Year's, is that a lot of fun? I don't know. I guess you could find a way to have fun in Houston.
Big town.
It's not San Diego, and it's not, Florida. But anyway, I don't know that we can change that without expanding the playoff. And again, now even the playoff wants to be beholden to these bowl sites, which I think is a bad idea. I think you should be playing on campus and giving the reward to the teams that have played the best and put them, in their home stadium, home field advantage, like we do in pretty much every other sport. Not all of them, but
continue to incentivize your regular season.
But people say regular season matters. Oh, all right, let's make it matter. I'm at home for the playoffs, just like I am in the NFL or in baseball or whatever. At least advantage. So they're just missing that. And you've got to admit it. And I don't think enough people that are running college football, whether it's these folks here or the folks that are running the CFP, want to admit that what bowl games were no longer really exists. And that's why kids are opting out, because it just doesn't matter as much.
Which is why, love Eric Moses. Got to work with him some when he was the CEO of the Nashville Superspeedway. But what he's missing in his analogy, his Rolling Stones analogy, is that he's essentially saying that what we got, listen to the last Fiesta Bowl. It was Oregon and Liberty.
Yeah.
Are you really going to liken people going to the Fiesta Bowl so they could watch Bo Nix or watch Caden Salter? They're going because their schools are going.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter if Bo Nix opted out.
Right.
Liberty would go if their third stringer was in because it's Liberty in a bowl game, right? They haven't been playing, FBS football for a long time. They cheer for cloth, man. That's the whole point of college athletics. We cheer for the stitches on a jersey that say our state's name when we don't have a pro team in that state. It's not like Mick Jagger being out from the Rolling Stones, because you know what operates still pretty well at a high level? The University of Oregon if Bo Nix isn't there.
Yeah.
The University of Oregon if Troy Franklin's not the wide receiver. The University of Oregon didn't fall off a cliff when Marcus Mariota got drafted in the NFL. It's a little bit of an off comparison because people are going to go to your bowl games, even if it's not important. They're still going for the university, for their alma mater, for their favorite team, and for a reason to get drunk at noon on New Year's Day.
Yes.
Look, that's where your role in college football is now.
What's happening is you don't have as many TV viewers. That may be where he wants to take it, and that I get, but again,
that's not your role anymore.
Right.
It's not. It's no longer that. And I think that's kind of where you're right. They're missing the mark on a couple of things. And one, your place in the sport. Two, you're still going to be able to sell. You're still going to be able to exist if you want to. If you want to have a place in this, you can. But know who you are. Let's have some self-awareness here.
I mean, because you'll still get people to go. You'll still get two schools that want to play in your event.
Bo Nix is not Mick Jagger.
Right.
Establish that right now.
Yeah. And no, listen, if Mick needs a day off, no, the Stones, this isn't Broadway. You don't bring in an understudy. The Stones may have to cancel the show, or at least postpone the show.
And get you a refund on your tickets.
And the Stones, by the way, are going back out on tour with Mick Jagger.
So this is a scenario that might actually happen in the next couple of years.
Could. But, and again, it pains me to say these things, but bowl games aren't what they used to be. And with an expanded playoff, the role of a bowl game, in my opinion, is only going to be further diminished, not elevated, despite what they're trying to do. Come back with a few other college football notes for you, and Mike Triplett coming up talking Saints and Spencer Rattler. We'll be right back. Tell you a lot about Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. And one of the other great things about it is, again, how long they have been working in the Midlands for their members since 1936. They see the difference that they can make in the community every day, whether it's teachers getting a car loan, local businesses that are opening up that maybe the big banks, just didn't want to take a flyer on. Things like that. This is what local banking is all about through a federal credit union. And Palmetto Citizens wants you to know that they don't loan their money out of state. They don't loan it out of the country. And they want to keep it all right here in the Midlands. Plus, they don't pay stockholders. So that means you, their members and customers, get lower rates and fewer fees on a variety of things. Checking, savings, credit cards, car loans, anything you might need. Check them out. See what they can do for you. Join my wife and me as members. PalmettoCitizens.org or any of their 14 convenient Midlands locations, which you can find online. Palmetto Citizens. Achieve your potential. Welcome back into our program on this Thursday.
We love the sports.
Speaking of that guy, Dieter, played by the great Mike Myers, my wife sent me something that is, I got to find this out. I think on this date, 1997, is when Austin Powers debuted.
Oh.
Which is...
all-time comedy.
Oh, man. I have an Austin. I think I've said this on the air. If not, I'll say it now on the air. I have an Austin Powers movie poster on the wall in our family game room. I love it. And as I've told you, it sits right next to a poster of Thunderball. So I've got the two greatest British or English spies of all time.
Right next to each other.
Right next to each other. I don't even know which one's better, man. Austin, let's face it, Austin was a real good spy because he was a fashion photographer. He just blended in.
He's groovy.
Yeah. Show me love.
And then he turned into Shrek.
Yes.
A couple years later.
We need more from Mike Myers, man. I know Mike Myers and Mrs. Mike Myers are probably living the life, and he doesn't have to do much because he made a boatload of money in the 90s and the early 2000s. Like a boatload. Like they did, seriously, a boat came up to his place and just dropped all the money. He wasn't making anything after Wayne's World and Austin Powers and Saturday Night Live and Shrek. And he just said, just wait for it until you can fit it all in one boat.
And I can get it in one, literally a lump sum.
And they just dropped it in. He's like, yes.
Some say they've never seen him out of the bottom of the pile. He's still fighting his
Maybe
way
that's
out.
the problem, man. Maybe that's
You
it.
can't make movies when you're buried in
where's
cash.
Mike? Yeah, he's buried under $800 million. But anyway.
What a problem to have.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of problems, the ACC versus FSU versus Clemson is a problem. And earlier today, I threw out a tweet. There's just a little bit of a sort of a timeline article on The Athletic today by Chris Benini, one of their national writers on college football, just kind of, where it stands now and what's next. And we've talked about that a lot around here because Clemson's included, obviously, as an in-state school. But there's this, we've said before, there's just this belief from some around the country that regardless of these entanglements and spats and whatever else, Florida State and Clemson are just going to the SEC. It's just a matter of when, not if. And not so fast, my friend, is what we hear. And I've asked a lot of people about that. But I threw out a tweet today quoting one of the lines that Chris wrote. And here's what I quoted from his article. Media industry experts are skeptical of Clemson and Florida State's, skeptical of their value at this point. Some believe North Carolina could draw more interest from the Big Ten or SEC because of its academic reputation and its position in a state where neither conference has a member. Now, obviously, the Big Ten doesn't have schools in South Carolina or Florida. Quite honestly, I love my state. I'm not so sure the Big Ten Conference is really all that interested in South Carolina. And, of course, that would have to mean Clemson University. They might be interested in Florida, but I'm not sure if they're interested in Florida State or Miami. And you're not getting UF to change conferences at this point in time. But I had somebody hit me on that. It was Aaron. And Aaron says, serious question, Jay. As this rapid expansion occurs, isn't it just as easy for conferences to start expelling members as adding members? Revenue sports at Clemson have been more successful in the last decade than South Carolina's have. Any concern there? I'll read you my verbatim response, and then we can talk about it. This is what I said back to Aaron on Twitter. I said, no concern of that. Unless a school is a complete wreck and falls out of compliance on multiple levels, they're not going anywhere without a hefty financial compensation package as an incentive to leave voluntarily. I don't see that happening. You can't just kick somebody out of the conference. You'd have to have grounds. And again, what would those grounds be? Well, you don't get it. You're not going to say to Vanderbilt, to Mississippi State, to Iowa State, to Purdue. Well, of course, Purdue basketball late actually does get TV viewers, but even South Carolina to some degree. And let's face it, even when Clemson's playing, Clemson might have a big brand, but if Clemson's playing Duke or Wake Forest or Boston College, it isn't like people are going, I got to watch that one.
I got to know where the CW is right now.
When Clemson plays Florida State or when Clemson plays Georgia or when Clemson plays North Carolina, sure. And when South Carolina plays Georgia. Is that more because of Georgia? Yeah, but when Carolina was good under Steve Spurrier, that was one of those games people wanted to watch, top 10 matchups and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, you got to have grounds to boot anybody out of any organization, right? What did I do wrong? You can't just walk up to somebody if you're, whatever club you're in or whatever, hey, you're out. Why? Well, cause. And again, you're not saying to Vandy or Mississippi State, and I'm using them because they probably are the two lowest rated television products in the SEC. Yeah, sorry, guys. You just don't move the TV needle. No, they still get their oversized novelty check worth 50-something million every year, soon to be worth $60 million a year.
You have to buy them out, too.
And you'd have to buy them out at how far down the road are we having to look and project? At least a decade?
A cartoonish amount over a cartoonish amount of time.
At least a decade, I would think, to try and incentivize someone to move. And that school would need to know they have a bona fide landing spot where they could take what they just got as a parachute payment, if you will, and couple it with what they're going to get in a smaller amount from a new league and know that the financial stability they currently enjoy will be there for, let's say, a generation to come. Because you never know how things might change over the course of time. But no, Aaron, I mean, I get Aaron's question, so I'm not picking on Aaron, but no. No one's getting kicked out of their conference unless, they just set fire to the rule book and flaunt it every day. Then maybe you got something. But you know what? By then, people are watching you on television, and so it becomes a catch-22. So no. Way too messy, way too expensive.
Yeah, I know the ACC is not having a fun time in court. I know they have a good chance of winning a lot of those court cases that we've alluded to over the last few weeks. But I'm sure the ACC would not recommend, if they went on Yelp and said, then there was the page of going to court against schools in your conference, they're not giving it 5 stars by any means. I don't think they recommend that.
No, not happening. But Aaron, good question. Appreciate that. We'll have some more guidance, I think, on the FSU and Clemson stuff in the coming weeks. The Clemson one's moving a little slowly. In fact, it's really not moving right now. The FSU one is moving down in Tallahassee. And we already had some movement in Charlotte in that ACC case. So we'll see where that one goes next. All right, come back on the other side. Spencer Rattler fell all the way to the New Orleans Saints at pick number 150, well below where he thought he'd be taken, or where a lot of us thought he'd be taken. Mike Triplett covers the New Orleans Saints, and he will join us on the other side to discuss why Spencer ended up down there and a few other things around the Saints in the NFC South. This is the postgame show. Too often guys just won't go to the doctor when they don't feel right. Something's just not quite where it used to be, or something's just a little bit off. Maybe it's because you think you can just tough it out. It'll all get better, or you don't want to talk about it with anybody because, that's how you think you should be. Don't be that guy. Get to feeling better after you see Dr. Dan Balknight and his team at the Men's Clinic. They are experts in healthcare for men. They're dedicated to making you feel like yourself again. Don't wait for it to go away. Like I said, Dr. Dan and his team get you a one-on-one consultation. It'll get to the root of the issue. It'll get you back to feeling like you used to and like you want to. No such thing as a one-size-fits-all treatment at the Men's Clinic. Again, call Dr. Dan Balknight and his team. Set up a free consultation, 803-875-MENS, and learn a lot more online at themensclinicsc.com.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. A few accidents to get to you that might be causing some issues on the roadways here this afternoon in the Midlands. We have a pretty major accident that's got 2 right lanes completely blocked. That's going to be on I-26 eastbound over at Airport Boulevard and exit 113. Near West Columbia, traffic backed up really far, and it's almost at a deadlock standstill there over in West Columbia near the airport. We have one in Richland County on Dutch Fork Road Highway at 76 near US 176 and Broad River Road. We also have one on I-20 eastbound before Monticello Road exit 68, and another one on 20 east at the Bush River Road exit 63.
Talking a lot of college football this hour. Switch over to a blend of the college and NFL game. And welcome on to the program for the first time, Mike Triplett. He is on the beat covering the New Orleans Saints. He's done that for many years for different agencies, including ESPN, now writing for New Orleans football. They've got a cool YouTube channel as well that they put some shows out a few days a week. Mike, good to have you, buddy. Thanks for being with us. How are you?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, all Spencer Rattler talk all the time now.
That's
us,
right. After he was taken, you guys at New Orleans football put out a tweet asking, did the Saints get the steal of the draft by taking Spencer Rattler at 150? And you throw out his season stats, including 69% completion, nearly 3,200 yards, better than 2-to-1 TD to pick ratio. Let me ask you, Mike Triplett, did the Saints get the steal of the draft at pick 150?
Well, look, I mean, quarterback is impossible to judge, right? Because, well, it's not impossible to judge, but I mean, it's hard to be a worthwhile day 2 or day 3 pick unless you're going to be a starter one day, or you know, a 10-year backup that you know a team can rely on. You know, sometimes it's all about opportunity for these guys, but without question, getting him in the 5th round from a New Orleans perspective changes the narrative around him significantly. I think a lot of people would have been really excited to get him in round 3 or even round 2, just because of the tremendous upside. You know, the arm talent, everything we've seen, what with the trajectory he was on early in his career. But when you take somebody like that in round 5, and it's just all icing, and it's all excitement without, you know, it's like risk reward without any risk. It's really exciting. I don't think there's going to be people are going to be more compelled to watch in training camp this year.
There were some who said he fell that far because of the high school documentary, when he did not come across all that well, and I don't think there's many people who would disagree with that notion of how he came across. Then your former colleague Adam Schefter put out, no, it's just because basically the teams that liked him the most, the Falcons and the Broncos, went with first-round quarterbacks, and they weren't going to take another quarterback in this draft. So what did you hear in sort of the in-between? Because let's face it, Spencer was projected around pick 75, and it took double that before he got taken. What were the whispers you heard about the delay in his getting picked?
Yeah, I mean, it's about the team and the team needs. I mean, that happens every year in the draft. It's almost – there's never an even dispersal. There's not a lot of second-round quarterbacks and third-round quarterbacks. You either probably get overdrafted, frankly, if you make it to round 1, or teams are addressing more immediate needs in the first 3 rounds. Even the Saints themselves, who have a somewhat long-term need at quarterback. Derek Carr is in his early 30s, and you know, he's under contract for a couple years, but certainly not guaranteed to be the long-term solution at that position. So they were somewhat in the market, but they didn't have a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick, and they said, you know, we didn't trade up for Spencer Rattler because we didn't go into this draft saying we had to have a quarterback. But by the time he was still there, standing alone for a long time on the top of our board in the 5th round, it was an easy, obvious decision for us. So, you know, if the Saints needed a quarterback, they would have traded up to round 2 for him probably. Mm-hmm. So that happens to quarterbacks. Why he is not considered in that tier with Michael Penix and Bo Nix, I mean, you have to assume some of that. I mean, I have a hard time wrapping my brain around it. I mean, obviously, I cover a team that wasn't turned off by that stuff, and it was just so long ago that, I mean, everything you hear about South Carolina was so glowing. The fact that Coach Beamer wanted him in the first place and had been at Oklahoma with him and had recruited him in high school, obviously he didn't have qualms about, the things he knew better than anyone, how he conducted himself and carried himself both in high school and in college when he lost his job to Caleb Williams. And then, I haven't heard anything but positive about how he kind of came through the other side and handled everything and then finished his career at South Carolina. So it's hard for me to believe that, I was just saying this to someone on our podcast today, like the conversation around him sounds like he just got suspended like this last season, and you're like, how's he going to react to it? Right. We've seen how he reacted to the adversity, and I almost think that should be considered a plus.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Talking to Mike Triplett. Mike covers the New Orleans Saints for New Orleans Football, and Mike, you mentioned Derek Carr, and they're at a spot right now of determining the future, and there were some highs and some lows with Derek Carr this past season, and a lot of especially if Spencer Rattler shows out in training camp and in preseason, and it's talked up pretty good with how well he's playing. Yeah. You think there's going to be real pressure if the team starts below 500 for the first 8 or 9 games for him to go in, or do you think this team's still really committed to giving Derek Carr a long leash this season?
I could see fan pressure and fan demand. It's grown a little stale here in New Orleans. 3 straight years of missing the playoffs. Although they went 9-8 last year, and I guess 9-8 twice in that stretch. Sean Payton's last year, and then 7-10 the other year. We were hearing boos for Derek Carr in the Superdome last year. We were seeing a lot of empty seats. We were seeing a lot of opposing fans there. I mean, they're kind of tired of being stuck in the middle. So, yeah, slow start. I could see people wanting to see what's next. I don't get that sense from the Saints themselves, though. And Derek Carr is going to be starting in a new offense this year. They hired Clint Kubiak from that Kubiak-Shanahan offensive tree that's so popular around the NFL. They know there might be an adjustment period there. They're heavily invested in Derek Carr. They truly believe in Derek Carr. He finished last season really, really strong once they figured out his strengths and weaknesses, and he got used to the offense, and they figured out how to protect him a little better. So I can't imagine that his leash doesn't extend through this whole season, especially with Spencer Rattler having to learn this offense and being a young guy and developmental by nature as a rookie. But, if he shows them enough, Derek Carr signed a 4-year deal, and the 4th year is, kind of a balloon payment that they're going to have to tear it up or extend him. If Spencer Rattler shows enough, then the Derek Carr contract could turn into a 3-year contract, and he could be the heir apparent waiting for sure.
Mike, kind of piggybacking off that, but looking at the entire division right now, we don't spend tons of time on the Carolina Panthers here in Columbia, but they're right up the road, about 90 miles away. So we pay attention to the NFC South a lot, and you might argue it's the worst division in football as we speak, depending on how that looks. Yet one of those teams gets a home playoff game. So does the climate of the division?
And Tampa Bay won it last year.
Yeah. Does the climate of the division matter right now in terms of what you and Elijah just discussed, how the team performs, the win-loss record, or do you feel like, Ms. Benson's going to say, listen, we're supposed to be much, much better than this. I don't care what the Falcons and the Bucks and the Panthers are doing.
Well, Spencer's coming to the Saints at a really interesting time because for that exact reason that you just laid out, the Saints have still been pretty heavily all in the first year after Drew Brees retired, and then the first year after Sean Payton retired, and even last year, because they saw that opportunity. They saw a division that they should be running circles around the other teams. Most of them were in some form or fashion in rebuilding mode. They were the ones who spent $30+ million a year to sign Derek Carr last year, while Tampa Bay signing Baker Mayfield felt like a bit of an afterthought while they were cleaning up some cap problems. And the Saints kept their foot on the gas all that time. And it was a big disappointment for the Saints not to win the division the last 2 years when you should have been able to win it pretty easily. But this year the Saints have changed their approach really for the first time to have a little bit more of a long-term outlook. They only spent big on one free agent, and even that wasn't spending big. It was a one-year incentive-laden deal with Chase Young, who's going to be coming off neck surgery. They didn't sign any veteran free agents who aren't in their young 20s. They didn't just restructure everyone's contract and push the cap problems. They're catching up on the cap a little. And then they made some kind of long-term best player available decisions in the draft instead of trading up just to fill immediate needs. So I think this team has taken a little bit more of a let's stop just be thinking about winning this division right now because it's winnable, and let's make sure we're setting ourselves up long-term as well.
Mike, I know when you were watching film of Spencer Rattler here in this draft process and after New Orleans took him, you were going to see a lot of Xavier Legette, especially if you watched film in the year 2023. You saw a whole
I think our first mock draft had Xavier Legette going to the Saints in the second round, yeah.
and as a fan of the team, I would have loved that. Been absolutely thrilled, but he's playing in Carolina. A lot of Panther fans here. In Columbia that are invested in the team. How much better do you think he's going to be able to make Bryce Young and that Panthers team, which they couldn't have gotten much worse, to be honest, but how much better do you think he's going to make that offense?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think he'll make any quarterback better because I think he can win and make you right. And every team would love to have a receiver like that. So that's a quarterback's second best friend. Carolina had a lot of problems with the quarterback's first best friend, though, and that was protecting him. So that's going to be really, really important for the Panthers, I think.
Mike, appreciate you joining us, man. A lot of Gamecock fans will likely gravitate a little towards what Spencer's doing. He's the first quarterback to be drafted from this school in a while. So there's that.
My lifetime.
Yeah, in a lot of people's lifetimes. But I know my good friend Will King wants me to pass along to your colleague, Jeff Duncan, that he feels badly for him that Jeff gets confused for a congressman on a regular basis and hopes that Jeff can just talk about football.
Play out on Twitter.
Yeah, happens routinely from what I understand. So feel for Jeff down your way. Appreciate you, man. We'll check in with you as camp gets underway and see how Spencer's doing. Thanks for the time.
All right, thanks for having me.
You bet. That is Mike Triplett, Triplett. Mike Triplett. You can follow on Twitter. And again, the new website that he is working for, neworleans.football. Check him out. Elijah's got his Gamecock baseball poll question update coming on the other side. See what you think. Be right back. 5 o'clock on this Thursday afternoon. Welcome back in. Final hour of the postgame show coming at you. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell here in the Herndon Chevy Studios. Little 5 o'clock news to get to as well. Drive around the SEC and more. We will start with Gamecock baseball. South Carolina hit 4 home runs last night and took care of East Tennessee State by a final of 15-2. Their second straight run rule victory. And it also gets them up to number 30 on the season. The Gamecocks pitching staff allowed just 3 hits on the night. Jake McCoy got the win with 2 strikeouts in 2 innings. And the final 4 guys that pitched, Veach, McCreary, Quinn, and Gainey, didn't allow a hit. And Gainey struck out the side in the 7th. And cut 7, please, Elijah. This is Coach Kingston on the overall performance and why he, Mark, took the blame for the Bucks even getting a couple of runs.
We knew the guys coming in the game out of the bullpen were going to try to get 1 inning out of each of them, and you got to get these guys in a rhythm. You know, we play Wednesday this week, so it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we wanted to get them on smaller pitch counts, but also get them back in a good rhythm, get some confidence. And the reason we pitched Jake is because Jake is an extremely talented freshman. Not many lefty freshmen in the country throw up to 96 miles an hour. He's gotten progressively better, and we just thought he deserved the opportunity. I think it's my fault that he gave up the 2 runs in that first inning. We pitched to the righty that was hitting over 500 on the year against lefties with a guy on deck that probably would have been a better matchup. And if we had done that, he might have not given up any runs in that inning. So I thought Jake handled himself pretty well today.
Sorry if I just threw everybody off. I was looking down and like, oh, it's headline time. And it's not. And I just said it's like 5 o'clock news time. I was starting my 5 o'clock news because I had to leave early today.
As if we don't have a sounder.
And I realized, I was like, wait, I didn't hear the
show.
news sounder. And then as I told Elijah to play that sounder, I was like, Jay, you're a segment ahead on your rundown. It's
Someone
almost
comes in here.
So it's almost 5 o'clock. And it's not quite time for the news. So you may very well hear that same sequence of events in about 10 minutes. My humble apologies.
That's a hell of a tease, technically.
It's been a day. I've had a lot. I apologize. I do know what I'm doing in this job most of the time. I did. It felt, as soon as I said that, I was like, wait, it's not 5 o'clock news time yet, but I don't know why I thought that I don't know, man.
Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. That somewhere will be here in 8 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. And who else wrote that with him? Alan Jackson?
I think so.
Well, I ain't been doing that either. Although now I'd kind of like just a little something.
A lot of something.
For the effort. In the meantime.
Nice try.
You know what? I'll just, good. Let's just, I got 2.5 minutes here.
Time.
Poll question.
Is a thing.
And I'll reset my brain.
You reset your brain. Well, I'll go ahead and give us a recap of what we got so far.
I was gathering up my news stories, and I just thought, oh, good, it's time for the news.
We're back from break.
That's where my brain went.
News. Not yet. Yeah. That's a false start. That'll be 5 yards, still first down.
That is a penalty. Throw the flag.
So the poll question for today, at least for the show, which regional grouping would you rather see the Gamecocks in? And these are based off of the 2 different postseason projections from D1 Baseball and Baseball America. Group 1, which was Baseball Americas, Wake Forest, College of Charleston, and Samford. Group 2, which was D1 Baseball's projection, Coastal Carolina, Georgia Tech, and USC Upstate. We have 118 votes so far. 66% would rather play Group 2, which is the group of Coastal Carolina, Georgia Tech, and USC Upstate. 33%, so a third of the voters, would rather play against Wake Forest, College of Charleston, and Samford.
Yeah, I vote. I didn't vote yet, but I guess I should. But I would choose.
Exercise your First Amendment right.
I would choose the D1, the Coastal, and Georgia Tech, and Upstate. Like I said, I think. Look, for one thing, I think a lot of these projections are going to change. Wake Forest is really good. Coastal is really good too. Don't get me. Yes. I'm not dogging Coastal in any way, shape, or form. I think it would be better, and some of you may completely disagree for the same reason I give. I think it would be better to play Coastal. I think the energy in the ballpark. like Carolina fans, it's funny. I don't know that Carolina fans should have a level of hate or animosity toward Coastal the way Coastal fans might toward South Carolina. But again, Wake is really good. The Holbrook angle that'd be an interesting week, for a lot of different reasons if Charleston came up here. Yeah. But I think if Coastal came, I just think I'd rather play that, but maybe that's just me. All right. We will have the headlines of the day at 5 o'clock. I promise.
When it's 5 o'clock.
Yes. Oh, man. I love my job, and I'm glad people like Ben Cato love our station and want to advertise with us because it lets me know that a guy like Ben may actually appreciate the fact that every once in a while we're human and we screw up.
For now.
For now, yes. But anyway, your yard look a little uninviting to the neighbors or even to you or to your significant other. Well, with all the weeds that might pop up and other things that are out there, it's time for you to make it look good. Whether you cut your own backyard, whether you do it for a living, Cato's Power Equipment is here to help you find your new favorite lawnmower. Check them out at 4012 West Beltline Boulevard, where they have been historically located since the early 1980s, or online at catospowerequipment.com. You can rent things, see what you like about it, make sure you get what you love serviced so that it runs for years to come. Cato's will get it all done for you all spring and summer long. Cato's Power Equipment.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell with a few accidents to report to you that are causing some delays on the roadways this afternoon. We got a major accident on I-26 eastbound over near Airport Boulevard and exit 113. The two right lanes are completely blocked, so traffic is really bad over there near West Columbia near the airport. We also have another accident, I-20 eastbound, right before the Monticello Road exit. That's going to be exit 68. And lastly, we have another one over near Casey, an accident I-77 southbound at I-26 near exit 1. I've gotten a call that confirms that traffic is moving pretty slowly through the area.
And it is now 5 o'clock, and it is time for the news on this Thursday. Alongside Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. If you just tuned in, well, you know what? I'm not even going to tell you how bad I screwed it up 10 minutes ago.
Well, if you go to the podcast page right now and you look at hour 2, it may or may not be titled Jay Forgets What Time It Is.
Full disclosure, I was gathering my news stories at the commercial break of the last segment, and for whatever reason, my brain said, "Oh, good, it's news time."
Does anybody really know what time it is?
Anybody really care?
About time.
I can't imagine why. Let's start once again with South Carolina baseball. Again, 4 home runs last night in a 15-2 victory over East Tennessee State. It was a 7-inning victory, their second straight run rule victory. As I said, you might hear some of these things over and over again.
Is there an echo?
For South Carolina, their 30th victory of the season. However, this time I will not have Elijah play the same cut I asked him to play in the last segment. Instead, sir, if you would, cut number 14, please. This is Mark Kingston in postgame on winning the games you're supposed to and talking about just how tough it is to keep on winning.
Well, this was a borderline quad 1 team too. I think they were 52 coming into the night. So there's actually, by playing us on the road tonight, they may have snuck into that top 50. And look, you play to win every game, and we have as many quad 1 challenges this year as anybody in the country. And I would say that we have more top 5 games than anybody in the country. And there's a huge difference. And I said that the other day. But you want to make sure that when you're playing teams that are top 5, top 10, you just hold your own, and we've done that. And then when you play teams outside of that number, you want to try to dominate the whole. And so I think we've done that. I think we've won most of the games we should win. I think we've only had one midweek loss all season, and I think that speaks to the depth we have on our team.
And Mark is right. In 3 different polls, or not polls really, rankings that are all result-based. The RPI, the ELO, and the DSR. And if you want to read about the ELO and the DSR, you can, and it will explain to you what they are. I don't have time right now, but in those 3 different rankings, again, all fact-based, South Carolina in the RPI today, number 10. In the ELO, number 9. In the DSR, number 6. So everything Mark just said is spot on accurate. The analytics based on fact say South Carolina is a very good baseball team. Now, Elijah, they just got to keep winning.
That's right. You got to keep winning and taking care of business, and at least managing the series that you can win. You have a good opportunity this year to get a sweep under your belt against a team that is very sweepable, and you've got a good chance if you do accomplish that sweep to go to 21-2 in non-quad 1 games. And guess what looks really good on a resume? Not losing to bad teams habitually.
You've got 1 midweek loss. That was to Georgia Southern here when you just didn't have it that day. Your last midweek game comes next week up in Rock Hill. You've already beaten Winthrop once here, so you get the return game in York County next week. You've got the trip to Como. You've got Georgia coming here, also a top 10 RPI team. Mm-hmm. And you've got Tennessee, a top 5 RPI team.
On the road.
So in Knoxville. So your RPI is going to be, those rankings are going to hold pretty steady. It's my opinion that if South Carolina goes 5-4 in these final 9 conference games, you won last night, so you got to beat Winthrop. You're in real good shape to certainly host. And as you've pointed out, depending on how you look at it and who does what, is there an opportunity? I feel like cracking into the top 8 might be difficult for South Carolina, even if they are currently projected as a 10 by D1 and a 12 by BA. I just feel like some of those schools have done enough already, but if you can do better than that, Elijah.
Yeah, they've a lot. These schools have done a lot, and take a school like East Carolina, which has a really good resume, and because there is a lot of homogeny in the conferences that are going to be having the top 8 spots with the ACC and SEC. A little bit of mixture wouldn't be a terrible thing for someone like the committee. So
and they want to do that,
and they want to do that.
They want to do that.
But there's a good chance maybe East Carolina gets cold.
Yeah,
loses some games, and when you lose games in a conference that doesn't have the quad 1 opportunities that the ACC and SEC have, you ultimately play the committee's hand. Maybe there's some schools in the SEC, maybe Kentucky, keeps falling back to the mean, which the mean could be even below you, right? We saw that these teams aren't far apart because they played some really good baseball last weekend. So if Kentucky keeps slipping, there's a good chance where you can surpass them in terms of quad one wins. They only have 2 more quad one wins than you. And if you match them, then you would have as much as anybody in the country. That's the type of thing that on a resume looks good enough to be top 8.
One more real quick. Cut 15, please, sir, on today's list. This is Gamecock right fielder / first baseman, because he's the first baseman right now, Ethan Petrie, on getting the offense to where they want it to be.
Oh, and I'm sure Kingston said this to y'all about the sim game. And I feel like that's really has gotten us in the game speed, always on our toes, ready for games. And I feel like we did it yesterday, and, we came out today swinging. And I feel like put us in that game mode, just gets us really locked in. And it's just like offensive production has been very important to us in this past few months, and we haven't been producing as much. And then once we found it, we're just going to ride with this, and it's just going to keep going.
Ethan Petrie amongst those who hit home runs last night. Again, Carolina goes to 30-14 on the season, 11-10 in conference play. Game 1 at Missouri is tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, 6:45 airtime here in Columbia and across the Gamecock Radio Network. Basketball last night, the Boston Celtics have moved on with a 118-84 win in Boston over the Heat. The Heat are good, and that was a whooping.
Yeah, they miss Jimmy Butler a lot, but even with Jimmy Butler, I don't know if he's making up 40 points.
But the Celtics are great.
They are. This is a team that should win the NBA championship. They have the best roster, top to bottom. They're going to be without Kristaps Porzingis until at least the Eastern Conference Finals. That's going to be a big loss because he unlocked a whole lot of that offense and allowed them to play 5 out pretty consistently. I still like the Celtics to be able to go to beat whoever it is they end up playing in the second round, whether it be Cleveland or Orlando. I think that one could be a 5-game series, but they're going to need Staps for the ECF if they're able to get there. Man, the way they play, look, the last couple of years they've dropped some goofy games at home. They dropped that goofy game at home in Game 2 where Tyler Hero had 14 assists and made his best Steve Nash impersonation for a night. But after that, they completely cut that mess off and won 3 straight, and really none of those were close, including the 2 in Miami. They weren't that competitive. This team, I don't want to say flew under the radar because 64-win teams don't fly under the radar. But people say all the time, the same old Celtics. Jason Tatum, got to get over the hump. Jaylen Brown got to get over the hump. I think this is the year they finally get over the hump.
Dallas beat the Clippers last night, also rather easily.
Shocker.
And this one in L.A., 123-93. No Kawhi for the Clippers last night.
Shocker.
Luka had a good night. Game 6 will be back in Dallas in a couple of days. And as Elijah said, tonight you've got 2 other games in the Eastern Conference where both Indiana and the Knicks could move on. The Bucks are at the Pacers, down 3-2. Knicks are at the Sixers, up 3-2. On that note, you may have seen the story the last time these two played in Philadelphia a few days back. Knick fans overrode the arena, and it was basically a Knick home game, and that did not make Joel Embiid happy. Well, it also didn't make these Sixers owners happy, and today they announced that they bought 2,000 tickets. Who do you buy, or aren't they your tickets? Were they available?
I guess as it makes you wonder exactly.
I don't know, but anyway,
works.
they announced that they had bought 2,000 tickets. Really, they say more than 2,000 tickets for Game 6.
So 2001.
They were going to hand them out to first responders, to teachers, to healthcare workers, and other fans. Even showed some people, getting some tickets out on the street. Carolina's Don Staley, obviously a Philly native and rabid Philly sports fan, said in all caps, season ticket holders, do not sell your tickets to Knicks fans. I repeat, do not sell your tickets to Knicks fans. Pour into our Sixers. We can really do this. So Coach Don getting behind it as well. My only fear, and I say this half jokingly, is that you give these tickets away and then some dude goes, I
can sell
I'll put
these
it on
for a lot of money.
StubHub. Yeah. So I hope that it works.
Those people would have the chance to do the funniest thing ever.
Well, that's
sell them to Knicks
but
fans for just
here's the thing.
ungodly money.
I think a few of them probably will. I just hope it's not most of them. It's a nice effort. But when I did see the story, I was like, seriously, like, y'all just want the cash? I mean, don't you want this? I don't know, man. I'm not here to listen. It's your ticket.
You better hope those teachers and firefighters are Sixers fans.
Yeah. Here's hope.
You have to be screened. Is it like a jury selection?
Well, like when they scan the ticket, it's not your ticket. Anyway, we shall see. Tiger Woods, as we continue our integrated media headlines of the day, has accepted a special exemption, and he will play in the U.S. Open up in Pinehurst next month. He's won it 3 times, of course. Last time in 2008. Man, I remember that one. He had to play an extra day. Rocco Mediate. Remember that?
That's right.
And he already had a bad knee. I remember a guy calling the show the day after. Y'all keep talking about it like it's some kind of big deal. And I was like, dude, you ever walk the really hilly golf course for an extra day on one knee and won the U.S. Open? And then the guy felt really bad about it, but he was like, it's not that big a deal. And I was like, yeah, it is. Because, again, U.S. Open, you don't play sudden death. You stop at the end of the regular round, and you play another 18 holes the next day. And he did it on a bad knee.
And that knee doesn't stop hurting.
It was a very big deal.
It's immediate. Rocco Wallace, but he got the job done.
That's right. No, that's right. My boy Rocco Wallace. It's the first time that Woods has not qualified for a major since the '96 PGA, when he was still an amateur. The beautiful Pinehurst number 2 will host the U.S. Open June 13 through 16. So that's cool. Special exemption.
Yeah,
I'd say he's earned it. And finally, speaking of legends, and I guess he's earned this too, Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. We told you earlier they're fighting a real bout in Texas at Jerry World coming up in July. Mike Tyson is now listed as the underdog in this one. According to David Purdom of ESPN, early betting on the fight has been light. Shocking.
Stunned.
And odds vary at sportsbooks around the country. Paul opened as short as minus 230 at ESPN Bet, but the price had been moving toward Tyson. Paul was a minus 180 favorite today at DraftKings. Who you got?
You know what? There's not many times in my life I've been able to say that I would bet on Mike Tyson, because his prime was when I was very young, even bleeding into before I was born.
I think his prime was before you were born,
I was
dude.
born, yeah. I guess the prime. I mean, he did make a I guess emergence.
Yeah, a little bit.
In the 2000s, a little bit. But I'll go with Mike Tyson.
I am too.
I'll take Mike Tyson.
But I'm not going to watch unless it comes with my Netflix subscription that I already pay for. But if Netflix asks me for even a dime, I'm not cheap. I'm just not going to pay for that.
It's the principle.
I'll be more than happy to watch a replay after I find out on Twitter who won the fight. That's our Integrated Media headlines of the day, brought to you by Integrated Media, 803-948-8327 for all of your home entertainment and home security needs, all from one source. Nobody better in this town than Integrated Media. Again, no job too small either. Yeah, you got that new video doorbell you bought at the big box store and you don't know what to do with it now? Call Integrated Media. You want all those everywhere, plus really great sound and TV? Call Integrated Media. Anything in between? You get it. 803-948-8327. That's our good friends at Integrated Media. The postgame show is rolling on.
Beat the seasons with AAA Heating and Air in South Carolina's Midlands. Time for a brand new system that you can feel confident about and more comfortable with. Yeah, well, you can get a free replacement estimate today when you log on to call888today.com. That's call888today.com. You say, wait. New system. It's going to be really expensive. I can't afford that right now. Roy and Dana Finley have you covered because their guaranteed financing options can help you out. Plus, 12 months, no payments, no interest in 2024, and the assurance of the AAA Heating and Air 15-year parts and labor guarantee. That's right. You'll stay nice and comfortable for many, many years to come. Again, get that instant quote at call888today.com, or you can call them up at 803-677-1500. Tell them yours truly, Jay Phillips, sent you. Do what my family and I have done. Stay nice and comfortable all year long when you work with our great friends at AAA Heating and Air.
Have had a lot to talk about a certain poll that we put up at 107.5 The Game on Twitter about the baseball team and about maybe which group you wouldn't mind seeing in the regionals where South Carolina to host them. There's another one we put up as well. We'll squeeze in some Gamecock football talk here because we're in the South, baby. That's what we do. That is what we do. And I had this question, and this is one I'll probably end up bringing up as well throughout the summer now that once we get a little closer to football season, especially in August when it starts to ramp up a little bit. But now that spring practice is over, I wanted to know what Gamecock fans think the position group that they're most concerned about is going into 2024. And the three that I had up, wide receiver, offensive line, quarterback, or other, where, you comment what other is. I want to see which one of those people are most concerned about, if they are concerned about them. Because we got to learn maybe a little bit in the spring game, not a ton. By nature of spring games, you're not going to learn an absolute ton about your football team, but 65% still concerned about the offensive line. 22% are concerned about the wide receiver group, 10.6% concerned about the quarterback, 2% concerned about other, but the other wasn't clarified. So 2.1% have failed my test here. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. But I understand the offensive line concern. Look, I voted wide receiver only because I still want to see if they're able to have somebody that can take the top off of defense. I do appreciate their efforts in getting Delvin Campbell from Nevada in the transfer portal, a 6'4" receiver whose average depth of target was almost 20 yards down the field. You got to have somebody, you got to have teams respect that vertical passing game. This is a guy who's been used at the Division I level in the vertical passing game. Yes, I know it's the Mountain West. Yes, I know it's Nevada. But I think this could be a good fit if you're able to use him in that capacity and you're able to threaten the downfield passing game. And I would like to see a couple of guys emerge as key targets, right? I'd like to see a couple of guys, whether it be Gage Larvidan, whether it be Jared Brown, Amari Huggins, Bruce, guys who can emerge as go-to receivers. Nick Harbor, you'd love to see that from Nick Harbor too. Would love to see one of those guys emerge as a guy who can catch 5-6 passes a game and get you 75 yards. Or on 3rd and 6, who is the go-to receiver to get you those 6 yards? I love the running back room. I think the offensive line room got better because surely it just got deeper. You'd like to see what Josiah Thompson has. There were some ups and downs for him in that spring game. But I think in terms of the biggest question mark that might invite more concern, if you will, probably the wide receiver room. For me, at least. And I know 22% of the people that voted for this also agree with me that the wide receiver room might be the biggest concern so far on this team right now. We still have about 141 votes. We have about 14 hours left in this poll. But one thing I'm not concerned about is the defensive side of the ball. And when we talk about this team this offseason, and we talk about strengths and weaknesses, what we know versus what we don't know, I can tell you this. What we do know is that South Carolina's defense is experienced. It's got more mature in the offseason by adding a lot of veteran talent, and they have a lot of knowns at key positions like defensive line. Look, I love that you're anchored defensively by guys like Tonka Hemingway, TJ Sanders, Boogie Huntley. I love those guys, your anchors. I love the additions in the transfer portal. I love, landing Dylan Stewart as a 5-star plus edge rusher and a guy who, even in the spring game, was everywhere and was in the backfield seemingly all the damn time. Love that. I love that. I think a known is that the defensive line is going to be really good. I think a known is that the secondary is improved and will be improved going into next year, that Nick Emenwari will improve in pass coverage, that DQ Smith will improve in pass coverage, that you're going to have guys that are going to be able to cover the slot receivers in the SEC a lot better than you did last year. You're not going to have maybe, hopefully, and I don't foresee you having another Ricky Pearsall event where he absolutely torched you in the fourth quarter of the Florida game this past year, in the game that ultimately defined the season. I don't think you're going to have that level of concern in the secondary because you figured so much out at the end of the season to where you got to feel good about the improvement that was made in it. Today on the Garnet Trust Hour, filled in for Tyler today, and of course Wes Mitchell and Chris Clark were in with me, but we were also joined by Demetrius Knight. Demetrius is the transfer linebacker from Charlotte, and he's played a lot of college football, y'all. Played a lot of college football, and he's been pretty accomplished at various levels, at the ACC level. He was first team All AAC with Charlotte last season, and as a linebacker, he actually led the team in interceptions. He's seen a lot of locker rooms. He's seen a lot of college football, played the sport a lot. So when he talks about his evaluation of the linebacking room, you listen, right? Well, today when we had him on, he was asked about his thoughts on the linebacking room, this defense as a whole, and I thought he had a pretty insightful answer. This is what he had to say.
With that room, it's a room of competitors, man. It's a room of guys who are hungry, and that's a room that you want to get better in. It's not a room where you get discouraged, like, oh, man, this guy's getting more reps, or this guy's doing that. Everybody wants you to get better. Everybody's going to help you study. Everybody's going to help you learn what to do here. Everybody's going to talk about ball, but then off the field, you know, in the dining area, everybody's going to joke around, mess with each other, and that's how you build a family. That's how you build a camaraderie, and that's how you can trust the guy to your right, to your left, or trust the guys who are on the field to make that play when it's time to win the game. That's
chemistry. That's chemistry, which is going to be important because you did add a lot of pieces in the transfer portal to your defense. You also added Kyle Kennard in the transfer portal, another former Georgia Tech guy who was incredibly productive in his last season as a Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket. You added a lot of different pieces defensively. Bengali Kamara from Pittsburgh, you added him as well, and you have a lot of great depth. I think that's the one thing about this linebacker room that I like, and that it wasn't in that clip like right there, but he mentioned that there's a lot of depth, that no matter who's out there, whether it's, Demetrius, whether it's Kamara, whether it's Kennard, that there's not going to be a ton of drop-off because they have a lot of experience and a lot of depth. It's a mature defensive group that is seemingly gelled really well, even in the short time they've been able to spend together. And that's a pretty significant thing when you're talking about a defense. I also like some of the insights he had about Clayton White's scheme. And look, the performance of Clayton White as the defensive coordinator of this team was a huge discussion point in the season, specifically after that aforementioned Florida game, right? You lost that game because of your defense. A lot of people weren't thrilled with Clayton White. But Clayton made an adjustment late in the season, and then you saw in the last little bit, especially in that Kentucky and Clemson game, where you only gave up 2 offensive touchdowns in those 2 games. Defensively, you played fantastic in those 2 games, 2 of the biggest games of the season. Offensively, you weren't able to do enough to get over the hump, but holding Kentucky to 14 points and not giving up a single offensive touchdown to Clemson was a really good way for that defensive unit to end their season. And Clayton White figured out a lot of different things schematically. Well, here's Demetrius and his thoughts on Clayton's scheme when he was in with us this morning.
The scheme so far has been great. There's, as Demo will put it, there is a bunch of animals on the D line. There's a bunch of animals on the defense as a whole. So playing behind a great D line, playing with great linebackers, playing with great DBs, it's been nothing but competitive, but it's fun. And when you're out there hunting as one, there's no better rush than that. So it's been lights out. I can't wait to see what we do, where we go with this defense, but I know that we will go out there with the object of hunting.
Hunting as one. I want that on a t-shirt, by the way. If this defense ends up locking down the first several weeks of the season, I would love to have hunting as one as a Gamecock football shirt. I think that would be fantastic. So it was awesome stuff there this morning from Demetrius Knight, and I expect him to be able to play a really big role with the newcomers, with guys like Debo on the defense. Look, there's going to be a lot of unknowns offensively, as portrayed in that Twitter poll, but I think one thing we do know for certain is that the strength of this team might be on the defensive side of the ball. Time to take a drive around the SEC, give you some scores from last night, tell you about some series that will be happening this weekend that will be pivotal to some SEC standings, and a whole lot more as the postgame show rolls on. From the WIS Traffic Center, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to report to you, many accidents to report to you that are definitely causing some delays on the roadways this afternoon. We still have at least now one lane blocked. We were at 2 lanes blocked over on I-26 eastbound at Airport Boulevard near exit 113. That is now down to 1, but traffic still moving incredibly slow through there. In Richland County, we also have an accident on Bluff Road near Highway 16 and Rosewood Drive. We also have one here in the county on US 176 at Broad River Road near Bush River Road. In Lexington County, we have accidents at I-77 southbound at I-26 near exit 1, I-26 eastbound right before the St. Andrews Road exit 106, and Highway 1 at Augusta Road at Pisgah Church Road. Oh, man, could there have been a more appropriate way to get into the drive around the SEC than Chris Fowler talking about how hard it is to go back-to-back and win national championships like Kirby Smart and Georgia did back in 2022 and 2023? Why is that appropriate, you might ask? Because just a little while ago, according to Chris Lowe on ESPN, Georgia makes Kirby Smart college football's first $13 million coach. From Chris Lowe's piece on ESPN.com, Georgia's Kirby Smart has received a new 10-year, $130 million deal approved by university officials Thursday in its annual athletics board of directors meeting, making him the highest-paid football coach in the country and college football's first $13 million coach. That's a lot of money. I'm not good at math, but I know what's a lot and what's not a lot. And I know that making $130 million over the next decade is a lot of money. Now, his contract before this extension, was $10.75 million a year. So that increase will go from $10.75 million to $13 million annually. He could also, according to Chris Lowe, earn up to $1.55 million in bonuses. So he's entering his 9th season as Georgia's coach. He has a back-to-back national championship under his belt and on his resume. He just can't beat Nick Saban in an SEC championship game. Can beat him in a national championship game, just not an SEC title game. I guess it's the only knock you have on him. Now that Nick Saban's out of the game, I think you could say he's the best coach in college football right now, and he's definitely the king of the SEC. Until somebody ends up beating them this year. If anybody beats them, they're going to be the favorite to win the SEC next season. They're going to be a favorite to win the national title next season. They're going to be coming back with a vengeance after how their season ended and they were excluded from the college football playoff. So Kirby Smart will come back with a vengeance and with a lot more money guaranteed over the next 10 years. Got some transfer portal news in the SEC, the Lord's Conference, and we'll start with Arkansas. John Calipari is in absolute rebuild mode. He made the joke in his introductory press conference that he spoke with the team because there was no team. There was no one to speak to. It was a joke. But now he's been able to bring in some people. He brought in Big Z, Zvonimir Ivisic from Kentucky, with him to Arkansas. He's gotten Boogie Fland, who was a commit, an on-3, 5-star plus guy, to come with him to Arkansas. And some of you might remember John L. Davis, the shooting guard from Florida Atlantic, who was their 6th man and leading scorer last season when they went to the Final Four. Well, John L. Davis did announce that he is going to commit to Arkansas. On-3 had him as the number 1 player in the transfer portal, and he averaged over 18 points per game last season. Now, Florida Atlantic regressed big time last year. And it wasn't as efficient a score, but still a really good volume score, and will look to play a really big part on this Arkansas team next season. And, of course, it was now made official because last night at midnight was the deadline for student athletes to enter the transfer portal, or I guess maybe notify somebody in the compliance department or someone in the athletic department that you intend to go into the portal. And Trevon Brazile did that last night for Arkansas. I think it was expected that he was going to enter the transfer portal and test the NBA draft waters. The big man for Arkansas, who played a lot on the perimeter, is going to be available in the portal. So that's some pretty big news for Arkansas. Maybe he stays in the conference, maybe he doesn't. Now, this is, I guess, maybe the best name, not because of on-field production in the transfer portal, but in football, new SEC school, Oklahoma, had a quarterback enter the transfer portal, and that is Oklahoma quarterback General Booty has entered the NCAA transfer portal per Pete Nakos on On3. That is his real name, and I do believe he is related to former Southern Cal quarterback John David Booty. But General Booty, who was a backup quarterback for Oklahoma for a little while, is now entering the portal and looking for a place to be the full-time starter, presumably, if he can get in somewhere to be a full-time starter. But I can imagine the headlines are going to get creative whenever Booty is taken from the transfer portal. On the diamond, big weekend in SEC baseball. We had some results last night as well. Obviously, South Carolina, because we talked about it all day, took care of business against the East Tennessee Buccaneers, 15-2 in 7 innings. Arkansas had to play all 9 in their midweek game, but they advanced to 39-7 on the season and took care of Missouri State by a score of 8-5. Last night, we did have an actual SEC game that was played on a Wednesday. This was Mississippi State and Ole Miss. It's the Egg Bowl baseball version. Ole Miss got beat by Mississippi State last night. Bulldogs win 5-1. That game actually played at Trustmark Park in Pearl, Mississippi, so slightly outside of Jackson. And it's where the Mississippi Braves play. Beautiful little ballpark out there. Lovely, lovely place next to some fairgrounds. And, you know, it was packed out pretty well. I got to catch a little bit of it. It was a very well-attended baseball game, and I kind of like that. Maybe, you know, getting a neutral site game like that for in-state rivals, kind of like what South Carolina and Clemson did here back in back in March with the Battle of Bull Street. Kind of a similar thing for Ole Miss and Mississippi State, but Mississippi State got the win. They improved to 30-15 on the season, 12-9 in SEC play. They're improving a lot, and they're coming off of a road series win, which not a lot of teams in this conference have been able to pull off this year. But they're coming back from that, from a road series win against Vanderbilt, followed up with a win against your arch rival in a minor league ballpark in the state. And look, their trajectory is getting pretty good. Watch out for Mississippi State right now. They're playing some really good baseball at the moment. Ole Miss, on the other hand, sliding a little bit. They're now 23-21, just a smidge over 500. They are 7-14 in SEC play. Tonight we have a pretty entertaining, I don't know if it's not going to be big in terms of standing implications for one team, but it is for the other. Tennessee will be in Gainesville tonight to start their series against Florida at 8 o'clock. Tennessee is 37-8, 15-6. They're a game behind Kentucky in the SEC East standings. Florida is just fighting above 500 right now, really scratching and clawing to get themselves into the NCAA tournament and be able to participate in a regional. They're 23-21, 9-12 overall. Here's the slate for this weekend. Starting tomorrow, Vanderbilt will be at Georgia, number 17 team in the country, against the number 19 team in the country. Tennessee and Florida will play game 2. And the series, I will claim the series of the weekend in the Southeastern Conference, Arkansas taking on Kentucky. Kentucky holding on to first place in the SEC East by a game. This series will be in Lexington, so that's going to help the Wildcats a little bit. But Arkansas currently at 39-7 overall, 16-5 in conference play. And when you look at the SEC West standings, Arkansas holds a slim 1-game lead over Texas A&M. So we have the two teams that are leading their divisions, the West and East, taking on each other and both trying to fight off a vicious contender at their heels, Texas A&M for Arkansas and Tennessee for Kentucky. Again, Tennessee is going to be in Florida, so that's a series to watch that has some serious standings implications. And for Texas A&M, they start their 3-game weekend series in Baton Rouge against LSU. LSU, who 7-14 in conference play, has had an incredibly disappointing season and looks like they might be succumbing to the curse of the defending SEC national champion, just like Mississippi State and Ole Miss have before them. So those are some big series to watch this weekend, as well as keeping up with the Gamecocks, who are traveling to Como to take on 20-26 Missouri, who is currently at 6-15 in conference play. That is our drive around the SEC. And coming up, I have an accusation to make. When you look at the RPI in college baseball, there's a computer tricker among us. Yeah, I'm making the accusation and I mean it. I'll tell you exactly who is tricking these computers when the post-game show concludes. I know some of you listening out there are familiar with the phone game Among Us. I've played a little bit, kind of got into it. Fun to play with a group of friends, right? But it's like playing werewolf, right? But the whole objective is to find the imposter. Find the imposter who's among us, right? And in college baseball and in college basketball, two sports that heavily use computer rankings to influence the postseason format as like a sorting tool, right? You would say all the time in basketball season, the net is a sorting tool. In college baseball, the RPI is the sorting tool. And you use these computer-based rankings to be able to try to, at least attempt to, weed out bias that humans have towards certain schools. Because on committees that are run by maybe athletic directors of participating schools or schools that are going to be close to participating in that, postseason tournament, sometimes the human element kicks in and bias kicks in. So we're going to rely on a lot of these computers to help use a sorting tool, right? And the RPI for baseball is that. Going through RPI rankings today, I came across a team that definitely reeks of a computer tricker, an imposter that's among us right now. The RPI, I think, does a really good job of sorting these teams really well and kind of looking at resumes and having a good algorithm that makes sense, right? I don't see anything in the top 10 where I'm like, oh, this team doesn't belong here. In basketball, the net has that every now and then where it's like, oh, I don't know how well this team actually belongs, but the computers say it. There's data that's apparently supporting it. But I found one today where I'm at a total loss, and that is with the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Rutgers is top 55 in RPI. They're a spot ahead of Texas, who is a traditionally really good baseball team or a good baseball school. Rutgers is sitting at 54 in the RPI, but they are 3-12 in the Big Ten. That's good enough to be next to last, only one game above last place Northwestern, who's sitting at 2-13 in Big Ten play. Rutgers only has 2 quad 1 wins. They're under 500 in the first quadrant, which isn't abnormal, especially for a team that's 54 in RPI. But they're 8-10 in the quad 2, 9-6 in quad 3. And they are 23-16 overall in quadrants 2 through 4. There are teams in the top 55 or outside the top 55 that have better records in those quadrants by a decent margin. And to give you a sense of maybe how silly Rutgers being at 54 is, like I said, they're 3-12 in the Big Ten. They are in next to last place in their conference, which, mind you, isn't a loaded baseball conference by any means. I think I would still take the Sun Belt over the Big Ten any day, even though Warren Nolan's RPI conference rankings has the Big Ten just slightly above the Sun Belt. Big-time respecter of the Fun Belt. But Rutgers is next to dead last in this conference. But for some reason, they're second in the Big Ten in RPI ranking. They have the second highest RPI ranking. Purdue, who is number 1 in the conference, I guess technically tied for Illinois for top of the conference, at 11-4 in Big Ten play, is 62 in net. 8 spots behind Rutgers. Sitting in 9 spots behind Rutgers in RPI is Illinois, also 11-4, tied for first in the Big Ten. And if you look at Rutgers head-to-head against those schools, Purdue, who is in first, in the first weekend of April, swept them. Purdue swept Rutgers in New Jersey, but for some reason, the RPI still has them a little bit higher. They haven't played Illinois this season, and they won't play Illinois this season. But this Rutgers team had an opportunity at North Carolina to boost the resume. They got swept. High Point, who is 152 in RPI, took 2 of 3. They don't have any significant series wins over really anybody, except for maybe Nebraska, Nebraska at the time was 20 in RPI. They took 2 of 3. That was at home. So if you want to be able to label somebody as a classic computer tricker, look no further than the Rutgers Scarlet Knights right now. And I've been looking at this for the last few hours now. Preparing for the show, I was doing a deep dive into the RPI, especially when it comes to the teams that South Carolina could play in their regional. Just 2 spots ahead of Rutgers is a team like College of Charleston, who in one of the major publications and their projections of the regional has College of Charleston as a 3 seed in a regional. No one's talking about Rutgers as being a potential postseason baseball team or a participant in the NCAA tournament because they're 25-19 overall with a strength of schedule of 72. They've won 3 of their 15 conference games in a conference that's not very good. They have not played a neutral site game this year. They're 500 in true road games. Sure, they've won 14 true road games. They're 500 in those games. And they've lost 16 games outside the Quad 1. But they're above Texas, who's 13-8 in a much better Big 12 conference. They're above the 2 teams that are tied for first in the Big 10. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but every year, somebody fools the computers. This year, that team is Rutgers. That's all for the post-game show today. I'll be with you tomorrow. No Jay Phillips. Got a fun show planned tomorrow, getting ready for the Missouri series and more. See you then.